astronauts to the moon.
Ignition sequence start. 3, 2, 1.
Houston, we have a problem.
Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
We copy you on the ground. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue.
What you're seeing here is a mirage.
What's going on, everyone? It's Jaron from Jeranism. We're back with yet another live video for you today. Crowdsource the truth. Flat Earth, are you guys for real? Or are you guys serious? We've got a few of us. It's not just me. I've got some guests joining me. As always, it's going to be a fun show. We've got, starting off to my whatever side that is over there, Dave Weiss from Deep Inside the Rabbit Hole. Dave, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jaron. Excited for the show. It's been a long time coming.
It's a nice cabin you got there. Must be nice.
It must be nice.
We've also got below me, Rose 777. Rose, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us. Remember to unmute.
Unmute, Rose.
Rose, man, what a good start to the show. Let's start all over.
Thank you so much for having me. Hello.
And we've also got joining us, a lot of people know him well. He's a YouTube favorite. He's from Crowdsource the Truth. His links are all in the description to his channel. Also, Jason, I put down there your Patreon and PayPal. So if people want to support the good work that you're doing, fantastic. He is Jason Goodman. Welcome to the show, Jason.
Thank you, Jaron. Nice to see you guys.
Yeah, thanks. So I've been, seeing Jason's videos for a long time, but then at the beginning of the protests, the lockdown, I caught one of Jason's stream where he was walking through Brooklyn and really standing up for New York, standing up for truth, and it blew me away. I immediately became a patron, and I've watched almost every show he's done ever since. He does shows with Oli Damagard a couple times a week, or
once a week on Mondays.
Once a week, and he's really doing important work. So there's different people that we like inviting on the show. People that slam Flat Earth, I love getting them on there because I got my fighting gloves up. I've only heard you go, Flat Earth, I don't know about that. That's all I know about your views on Flat Earth. You could elaborate in a minute. But I want to talk to you about Flat Earth. But one thing is, I was hesitant going, do I want Jason focusing on Flat Earth? Not that you're going to drop what you do, because what you do is essentially important. The truth seekers out there, there's Jason Goodmans. Then there's Jarons and Roses and Davids that do this over here. And then there's, Crow 777. And all together, I think we make a good truth soup. So I love your work. And I figured, if you know the globe lie, like we like to call it, if you can see the globe lie, maybe your work will get even better if your feet are planted on familiar ground. Rose, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to open up with sharing a little bit about how I came to Flat Earth, and then I'll let the experts take it away. This is very new for me. I joined Crow 777 Radio in 2017, and Crow is an amateur astronomer. He's captured so many interesting things in the sky that have made people question things. And the Flat Earth topic was kind of coming up here and there, and he never said anything flat out. The earth is flat, but he would always say the earth is misdescribed. And there were so many things that were making me question things. But I think to myself, what is it with this flat earth topic? I don't feel comfortable with it. It's got to be ridiculous. All of the people in my life at the time that I respected were saying, don't look at this. It's a psyop. It's for people that don't understand science. And so I took it upon myself one day to do my own personal observation. And I won't go into the details of the math right now because you can always do that on your own, but I'm on the north shore of Lake Pontchartrain, it has a bridge that is 24 miles wide. And from one side of the lake, I was able to zoom in with the P1000 to see the roof of the Superdome. And with 8 inches per mile square, which is NASA's math for the Earth's curvature, I should not have been able to see that roof. And it was unmistakable. It's a bright white roof. It couldn't have been anything else. And a lot of people who believe in the spinning ball think that this is a result of refraction. But if you actually know how light works, it doesn't bend over a curve. It can be misdirected in a straight line, but it can't curve. So that's not a valid argument. So then I thought to myself, okay, well, they're hiding something. Maybe they're hiding hidden lands and it's actually a bigger ball. And that's where the extraterrestrials actually come from. And I had all of these questions, but I just decided to look into it more and more and more, because just like David, I wanted to prove that Flat Earth was wrong. And I looked into more experiments, like putting lasers over big frozen lakes, and it not, even though it would be a massive ball beyond comprehension to the human eye. You would still be able to detect curvature by their math standards. But at any rate, that's what got me into this. I was so embarrassed at first to ever mention this to any friends and family. But now during this time, because of the mass deception that is occurring, if people can wake up to the fact that we have been lied to about this, let alone the moon landing and let alone fake illness, this would really help people to understand, take it upon themselves to really question things. And other things that I would also bring up, just something, Crow is my personal friend. I went and I took footage right from his computer that has not been altered. And we created a film called Shoot the Moon. And I'll go ahead and I'll send you a link so that you can see it for free. And he has filmed every solar eclipse that has been going on for the past couple of years. And he has proven that the moon plays no role into an eclipse. If the sun is the brightest thing that we have, then the moon would be backlit by it. You would be able to see it moving in front of the sun. Why is it that we never hear about this? We got to get more eyes on the sky. So I need people out there to get telescopes, film eclipses, film the interesting things in the sky. Another interesting idea to consider is that you can zoom in on the moon and put it in focus and then move it over, and other luminaries will still be in focus. How would that be possible if there were millions and billions of miles farther away than the moon? And sometimes people would chalk it up to the way that the camera works, but this can also be done with a telescope. So these are just things to think about, something for people to look on their own. And so anyway, thank you for letting me open up with that. I believe that the earth is flat, and I'm willing to consider that I'm wrong. And so I'm always keeping my mind open. So take it away, Jaron and David.
Well, I think, Jason, the other thing that's important to me for people to understand is I think flat earth has such a stigma against it, right? So I think that's what causes a lot of people to be very standoffish of it, because of the idea of being a flat earther is considered the worst thing that you could ever possibly be. It's the dumbest belief you could ever have. I've tried to rename it a little bit True Earth, because I think if anybody, and I want to read a comment that somebody wrote in the chat earlier, which I thought was strange. Maybe you can help explain it to me. Someone in the chat named Rupert Twine said that he knows you're a great journalist and a great human being, and said that they know what you say about True Earth. So today's show should be interesting. So I don't know if you've ever mentioned that. I don't know where they were
What
getting.
I say about True Earth? I have never heard the term True Earth before. You just mentioned it right now.
Okay, that's why I was wondering if this person who made the comment maybe made a mistake, but he was saying you're a great journalist and a great person, and
Thank
they
you.
said they know what you say about True Earth. But really what it comes down to is you have realized, if anybody, that we're in a world of deception, right? We're lied to at every turn. So really what flat earth is a realization that, if you go back and look at the history of how NASA began and everything that they've done from the beginning, and you really look at some of these ideas that are considered proofs, they all can be disproven. Now, again, does that mean, and we say flat earth, a lot of people think of a piece of paper and they say, well, the earth clearly isn't flat. We're not a flat piece. We're not saying it's two-dimensional, right? Of course, we're saying there's hills and valleys and peaks and mountains, ocean floors, whatever. But what we're really saying in a nutshell is that the oceans, like all water, lie flat. They lie level. That's what water is. That's how you determine what's level. And we don't believe that water bends around an entire giant ball and is held up in outer space. There's a lot of people who start to see it. I mean, Michael Tellinger, David Avocado Wolf, these people that have looked into it, maybe they don't come out and say, oh, I'm now a flat earther, because of the stigma that goes with it. But what they say is there's some major problems with the ball. And we get the same thing from people like Jeff Berwick. So a lot of people that, I respect their research, you being one of them. And, the things you brought out, a lot of people might know you from your interview with Dershowitz, calling him out for his absolute nonsense. Recently, I saw your interview with Alex Jones. So you do a lot of good work. And I think that if you ever did really start to look into this, at the very least, what you would have to come out and say is, well, yeah, you're right. It appears that there's issues with this model that we've all been sold is so true. And there's no question about it that we're flying in space, and that the sun that we see is, 867,000 miles wide, which is, to a lot of us ridiculous now at this point when we see evidence with, crepuscular rays and other such things. So I do want to get into that with you. I will ask you one question just to get started, so I can kind of at least get a gauge for where you are with some items. Do you think that we've been to the moon?
Before I answer that directly, I just want to lay down a few things, because everybody's had a chance to speak and there have been a couple questions asked. So first of all, I do not believe the flat earth theory. I believe the earth is a globe, that we have a solar system and planets and gravity and things going around the sun. I believe that. What I've been taught about that and told about that seems plausible, seems scientifically based. However, my approach to anything in general is that I am really fond of topics that, when they're brought to my attention, seem absolutely ridiculous, but are then supported by strong evidence that makes them impossible to ignore. Now, a couple people have used the word proof, and I want to say I will not be using that word. I do not like the word proof, because proof is a dynamic sort of word, in that if we're talking about proof in a mathematical problem, that's a different standard than proof in a civil court case. It's a different standard of proof in a criminal court case. If we go to Canada, if we go to England, proof means a lot of different things. So I think it's more useful if we talk about elements of evidence, and there can be contradictory evidence, there can be confusing evidence. Rose was talking about how could something further away than the moon also be in focus if the moon is in focus. That can be explained by an optical phenomenon called the hyperfocal distance, where beyond, once something is in focus, and depending on the characteristics of the lens in terms of its aperture, its focal length, other characteristics, the size of the imaging plane, things beyond a certain distance will all be in focus. So what I've found when I've had these discussions with friends of mine who support this flat earth theory so far, and I'm not saying that I've heard every element of evidence, but the evidence that's been brought to my attention has been able to be disproven by stronger evidence like what I just shared with you. Now, the other example that Rose gave us, and these are interesting and good experiments to do, but I presume if we spoke to whoever at NASA decided that 8 squared, whatever that formula you gave us to calculate the curvature, that is a rough formula. I would assume that doesn't take into account that if you stood in the bottom of a valley and did that, obviously it wouldn't work. I don't know what the geography is of that area of New Orleans where you were looking. Perhaps you were in a lower plane where, you're looking over and there's some variation. We know it's not a perfectly spherical globe. There's relief and ups and downs in the surface. So again,
just on that one, that's why we're talking about doing observations over water.
Right. That's interesting. I don't necessarily have an answer for that, but I also want to make sure that we don't conflate. Yes, we are lied to about a lot of things, but that doesn't necessarily mean if someone has said, 19 pilots who had never flown a jet before and had low hours flying a Cessna were able to operate a 767 well beyond its performance envelope and fly it at 580 miles an hour into a building that's 100 feet wider than it. I believe that's a lie. I do not find it plausible that someone who's never flown a jet before could achieve that. And I think there's another explanation for what happened there. But I want to make sure, certainly I won't do this, and I want to make sure that our viewers and other people who are evaluating this information do not conflate one lie about something with another topic and presume that to mean that we must be lied to about this as well. So there's my sort of basic premise. And also, Dave's been on the show. I enjoyed Dave as a guest. A lot of our viewers wanted me to speak to Dave about this. So I am opening the floor to you guys to educate me, because frankly, I do not believe the earth is flat, and it's going to be tough to convince me otherwise.
Can I just
Yeah,
respond
so
to what you
let
said
me
really quick? I just want to respond to what you said
Go
about
ahead,
the Lake
Rose.
Pontchartrain thing. And thank you so much for bringing up the optical lens
Hyperfocal
details.
distance.
Hyperfocal distance. I'm totally going to look into that afterwards, because either I'm going to stop talking about that, or I'm going to discover something new that will help or, hurt my argument. So thank you very much for that. That's the first time I've ever presented that as evidence for something. But when it comes to Louisiana, this is the first thing that just popped into my mind. And again, there might be another logical explanation for it. But aside from the fact that we're looking over the 24 miles of water, which is sea level and supposed to be totally flat without hills or valleys or anything like that, if you even look at a map of Louisiana, it's swamp territory.
Yeah.
And as you get closer to the coast, you're actually going below sea level.
Right. That's what the whole point of the levees are, is that the city is below sea level. I mean, again, I don't know. We'd have to speak to somebody who knows about geography.
So that would even bring it even lower. So it actually support. I believe that supports my argument more. Of all other things considered, I just wanted to throw that out there, just to add to your contemplation on that particular example. That's all.
Sure.
So one thing I want to point out before we really dive in is, if the flat Earth was true, there was a globe lie going on, it would be a very well protected secret. And we'll get into why would they lie, because that's the inevitable question that always comes up. There is so much disinformation out there, and as you know, with the censorship on YouTube, if you Google flat Earth, you get all the propaganda. You end up at the Flat Earth Society, which is not us. The Flat Earth Society is pure nonsense. It is to make somebody, hey, I'm going to research flat Earth. Go to Flat Earth Society. Oh, you stay there for 10 minutes, you'll never look into flat Earth again. It's the most ridiculous thing ever. And that's where you end up if you don't have guidance on, finding the proper information.
All right.
Okay.
I'm looking at Flat Earth Society right now.
Yeah, don't, because we're not so here's the thing. We don't
Mad Mike Hughes.
Yeah. So again, this is all disinformation. The Flat Earth Society, makes you think that we're the only flat planet and the other planets are round. Well, we don't believe in other planets. We don't believe in terra firma above the Earth plane. We're not, you don't go to the edge of Earth and fall into space. That's not what we believe, but that's what mainstream wants you to believe. And just a quick note on Mike Hughes. Mike is a stuntman, crazy stuntman, like Evel Knievel, but not as good. And he was looking for some funding for his stunt, not to prove the Earth is flat, just a stunt. And a couple of flat earthers went to him and said, hey, if we raise your $7,000, will you write flat Earth on your rocket? Just as a billboard. Not that you're proving flat Earth, we thought he'd have a huge audience. People would say, what? Flat Earth or Earth is flat or whatever it said. It was just a billboard. The media ran that story everywhere. That went out on every publication that this crazy man was going to kill himself trying to prove the Earth is flat, jumping 1,800 feet in the sky. So why did that go viral?
I don't know.
Yeah.
And we all talked about it and said what's going to happen is this guy's going to end up dying. So
when did that happen?
When did he die?
Last year.
I don't know. When did he launch this rocket and did he die?
Yeah, he did. He died.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
What an idiot.
Yeah.
That's called Darwinism right there.
Yeah, but they blame it on flat earthers. None of us believe, he wasn't trying to prove the Earth is flat. He was a flat earther, but that had nothing to do with proving the Earth is flat.
No,
you're not going to see curvature from the distance that he would have gone if he had been successful.
All right. So, Darren, unless you want to say something, I always like to start with.
I want to go back and ask the question again because I think it's important.
What was that? Do I believe we went to the moon? You asked.
Right.
So this is a very good question because you see that is separate from whether or not the Earth is flat. The most compelling thing that I've heard that caused me to question if we went to the moon or not, because I've looked at a lot of that evidence, and there's a lot of evidence that causes me to think that we did, and then there's evidence that causes me to question if we did. But who's the most famous guy for making movies about?
Stanley Kubrick.
No, not Stanley Kubrick. The guy
Bart
who made
Sobral.
Bart, yes. Bart does a video where he says that, in the 1960s, we're at the height of the Cold War, and that staging this would have been, in his premise, economic warfare against the Soviet Union at a time when that was very important. And I said, that is the first compelling argument that makes me think of a motivation for doing it. That would make sense. And in order for that bit of economic warfare to work, the citizens of the United States and all the citizens of the world would have to be convinced. So that's a compelling motive for faking it. And then when we look at the other footage, again, that's another one where a lot of the evidence, almost all of the evidence that's presented is sort of speculative and hypothetical questions that often can be answered by scientific phenomenon, whether it has to do with photography, lighting, looking at two-dimensional representations of things that exist three-dimensionally and drawing incorrect conclusions. A lot of that has been debunked by compelling claims, but I would say I lean towards believing that we did go to the moon, but I am very open to more evidence that could convince me otherwise. And the number one thing I think that could be done by NASA or anyone who wanted to prove one way or the other that has not been done is it's never been well explained to me why in 2020, between the incredible megapixel resolution of digital cameras, the amazing optical power of telescopes, why can't someone, particularly during one of these, red moon or whenever it's the closest that it is in 30 whatever years, why can't they point a telescope at the damn thing and show me the car that they landed there? I don't understand why they can't do that. I have spoken to someone who works at JPL who said that there are mirrors that were placed on the moon that they shoot lasers at to make measurements. Now, I have no way of verifying that myself, but if there was like a Moonwatch website that you could go to that says like, okay, at such and such a time, when the moon is at this location on this date at this time, look at the website and you'll see the car will be visible or the lander will be visible. Why not do that?
Yeah, they've never done that. And I mean, the bigger question too is why haven't they gone back? Like you said,
that becomes a financial and political question, though, because Congress says no, and then people say, "Oh, they lost the technology to do it." I actually have an explanation for that. I have DLT tapes in storage right over there that in 1990, whatever, I was able to throw it into the computer and get it to load on. But now the DLT drive has failed. That type of DLT drive is very difficult to find. The software that ran the DLT drive, the company's out of business. The operating system that it worked with is generations old. So getting that legacy technology to do what it was able to do 10 or 15 years ago would take such a tremendous effort for me. It's almost more sensible just to design a whole new system from the ground up. And if you're talking about NASA and an infinitely more complex system, I think those type of occurrences could accumulate to the extent that you just can't make the thing work again without starting from scratch.
They did it in 1969. So think of how far technology has come since then. Think of the computing power. Think of the the absolute ease of building rockets, that they launch these rockets constantly. It almost seems like they're launching rockets daily. And it's not like it would take extra fuel, right? You get out into space, supposedly you launch off and you just head over to the moon. You're in that orbit, you land, you get out, you do all the things. I mean, they should be able, I made a video called Why Haven't You Done This Yet, NASA, as far as putting a camera on the moon showing the Earth. Something that should be so easy. They'd be able to pay for it with just advertisements, right? Imagine we could go to a website that's called earthfrommoon.com, and it's a camera on the moon showing the Earth. It would always be showing the Earth, right? Because the side of the moon that faces the Earth always faces the Earth. And you'd have a Target logo, a Pizza Hut logo.
Kickstarter, Jaron, Kickstarter. That's a new business, man. I love it. It's a good idea.
But they also could show the eclipse from the moon. They've never shown us.
They could and they would, but I want to be careful that we don't go too far down the road of speculation. All of these things we can sit here and speculate about how easy they might be, but NASA can't just conjure up billions of dollars and build rockets. We see what's happening now with SpaceX. I was watching an interesting show about SpaceX talking about how their rocket has advanced in the same time frame that NASA has been designing the SLS. And they explained that NASA cannot function in the way, if Elon Musk and a boardroom of maybe 8 people sit together and say, we're going to do this, they can turn on a dime. NASA needs to get funding from Congress. And if you're the representative from Tennessee, you want this rocket facility to be used because it's going to bring jobs to your state. That SLS is a conglomeration of old space shuttle technology with new technology. It becomes a bureaucratic system. It's the difference between the post office and FedEx. When you've got to send something critical, if you're sending something to court and it's got to be there tomorrow and you don't want any mistakes, are you going to the post office or are you going to FedEx? I think most people think most of the time FedEx gets it done better because it's a private company and it might cost more. But I think there's a lot of factors like that come into play.
Jason, can you see the moonlander over my shoulder there? I mean, if you take a close look at a high-res picture of that moonlander, it looks like it's made out of papier-mâché, tinfoil, duct tape, and curtain rods. And supposedly 2 guys and a car were in there with golf clubs and all sorts of stuff.
And what is your knowledge of the, how would you explain human beings being able to go through the Van Allen radiation belts?
I can't say that I have any firsthand knowledge of radiation, what its effect is on. I'll tell you what, I talk to Larry Nichols every week. Do you guys know who Larry Nichols is? How can I explain how a 70-year-old man can smoke 500 cigarettes a day, have double pneumonia, and I'm telling you, the last time I spoke to him, I said to myself, that's the last conversation I'm ever going to have with him. Then a few days later, he called me and he's like, hey, buddy, let's do a show. And it's like, wow, he sounds great. So I can't explain these types of things. I don't have any knowledge about radiation, the Van Allen belts. I will say this about the Van Allen radiation belts. The very first broadcast satellite that went up was called the Telstar satellite. And I'd have to refer to Wikipedia, but the Telstar satellite, we are told, stopped transmitting. Let me just see if I can find it here. Satellite. It stopped transmitting in like sometime here. Where does it say? 1962. It was launched on July 10th, 1962, and it relayed first television pictures and telephone calls. And then something happened to it with the Van Allen radiation belt where they tell us that it stopped functioning. But that's what they're telling us. How do we know it stopped functioning? It could still be functioning.
Jason, how do we know that it was actually ever working, that it wasn't just data being sent? And earlier you said that faking the moon could cause a problem with Russia. How do we know that we really are at war against Russia, or is that just part of the divide and conquer? Maybe Russia and the U.S. have always been in it together.
I mean, we could get down to the question of how do I know that anything around me here, including this computer, you guys, everything I'm perceiving could be a figment of my imagination.
Well, we're not going there. We're not going there.
Well, but we should, because if we're going to question everything like that, we need to understand that every individual perceives the world through the filter of their own brain. And that's coming from your eyes, your ears, my vision, my perception, focus, my ability to discern stereoscopic things. I'm going to see certain things that other people cannot see. If someone has strabismus or other visual problems, they're not going to be able to see the world stereoscopically. They're not going to notice certain things. And so we each have different levels of perception. Right. And I just want to deal with the things that we can really,
So let me ask you a question. If we can prove that NASA is lying of something,
cannot prove it. You could present me with evidence that would support that theory, but I don't think we can prove it.
Well, there's countless videos of them getting caught in their wires when they're on the space station. They're floating around. The photos of Earth, they admit they don't have photos of Earth. They admit that they're all constructs. This picture right here. There's the United States. You can see some of South America. The rest of the continents of the world are on the other side of that ball. This is an official photo from NASA. This official photo from NASA. Why would they fake a photo like this?
Well, I can't say, I'm not going to agree that we draw the conclusion that the photo is fake. I've done a lot of photographic work, and there are often things that you do to make a particular photograph more presentable to the audience that's going to view it that don't necessarily substantially alter the content of it. Again, you're dealing with photographic principles with lenses, telephoto lenses with focal lengths that are so long, they introduce all kinds of optical distortions. I'm not trying to hold water for NASA. I'm just saying there's too many factors here that I don't know about to be able to answer that question definitively.
Here's another photo, two photos. I forget how many years apart, 10 years apart or whatever, Jaron. If you look at the size of the United States, the one on the top is twice the size. Now, and these balls are the same size if you measure them. They're
how far away was the camera? What was the focal length of the lens? It does.
It doesn't matter if you're showing the whole ball and they're both printed at the same size.
No. That's totally wrong. So what I want you to do later is get a telephoto camera lens. Have you ever seen, it's called a zoom compression shot. It's called a Zolly shot. It's called a vertigo shot. Mm-hmm. If I get on a dolly, a wheeled camera thing, and I get far away from you and I zoom in with my zoom lens so that your head is a fixed size in the frame. Mm-hmm. And then I get a dolly grip to push the dolly towards you while I zoom out slowly, keeping the size of your head the same size in the frame. The background will wildly distort in this optical compression that is normally used to convey a sense of bizarreness. Like if a character is feeling isolated, they might smash the background and make them feel compressed. If a character's mind is being open to something, they might move it in the other way, and it creates this distorted optical effect that someone might look at and say, how is that possible?
Yeah.
But I mean, again, I don't like these open-ended questions where we're asking, how could this happen if not blah, blah, blah. I prefer definitively answering things, or where we can't definitively answer them, presenting you guys with things like hyperfocal distance, like zoom compression, like how telephoto versus wide angle affects the look. This is a two-dimensional representation of a sphere taken with a camera from some distance to the thing, presented here at some size. Like in terms of if we were dealing with this in a court, the chain of custody on this evidence, I have no idea where this has been, what processing this has been through, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
We also could just sit here and make excuses for everything all day as well, right? I mean, we could
not excuses. We got to talk about the principles of physics, the principles of photography, how this imagery is acquired, how it is presented, the practical aspects of the materials that we're looking at.
I'm familiar with the kind of film that you're talking about where it looks like it's zoomed in and then the person becomes more clear and then the background becomes distorted. And I'm just curious, when we're focusing on that idea and I'm looking at that globe representation, it doesn't look like let's say we were going to focus on the continent and then the other things around it don't look distorted. If we were going to go with that example, what would the rest of the globe look like, and wouldn't it make the sphere shape around it distorted as well? I'm just curious about trying to understand the kind of camera optics that you're describing.
Right. There's a couple different principles that I might have confused you with an imprecise explanation. So what I'm talking about is there is a compression that happens. So you were talking before about how can something be in focus past the moon or whatever. There's a couple different things happening. There's something called depth of field, which if you watch, there's an interview that I just saw with Joe Biden where I believe right now broadcast television is trying to differentiate itself from what we're doing here. This is a podcast, right? So we've got Jaron sitting in his office there, and he and his microphone are very close to the camera, but that poster on the wall and the corner of the closet are considerably further from the camera, yet it's all fairly well in focus. And, you know, my nose is kind of 12 inches from this computer. This picture of Bill Clinton wearing a dress is several feet behind me, but yet it's still in focus. That is happening because the sensor in this webcam is a tiny little thing. And so it has the things that it photographs are going to have tremendous depth of field. Almost everything from right here to as far away as you can get from this lens will be in focus. Now,
but would that
hang on, let me just continue.
Okay.
So I've got over there, I've got a DSLR that has a very large sensor. It's got the sensor the size of a 35 millimeter imaging plane. And when I put a telephoto lens on that and I focus on Jaron's nose, things will be very out of focus behind him. So that's one type of distortion. If I were to zoom in on Jaron, it would make the wall look closer to him because I'm just basically magnifying a small image. So the thing to do to test what I'm talking about is get a zoom lens that can be very wide angle and sit in front of it and look at how your face looks at a particular size in the frame. Your nose is going to look like it's sticking out. Your head is going to look super round. It's a very distorted, like, ooh, that's a lousy picture of me. Then get far away from the camera and zoom in so your head is essentially the same size. But how does it look? Well, your head is going to look very flat. The relief between your nose and your ears, it's not going to look round and bulbous. It's going to look more flattened out. So when photographers want to take a picture, whether it's in a movie or a fashion photo shoot, they're going to select a particular focal length lens to get a desired look out of the image. And changing the focal length and the distance to the subject will have a lot of impact on how a lot of different things appear. And this is just do with lenses, optics, physics, photography, all kinds of distortions that can be introduced.
Yeah, I mean, the problem becomes for me is if I wanted to all of a sudden say today that, okay, now I believe we're on a globe, I could use the same kind of examples and just say, yeah, it's lenses, it's optics, it's why, you know, why do we see too far? Oh, because it's refraction. So it's very easy to, and I'll call them excuses because they really are. What you're basically saying is with those pictures of Earth, that there's nothing we could show you that you wouldn't be able to.
No. Wait a minute. I will not allow words to be put in my mouth. What I'm saying is we don't know what distortions occurred. So if NASA put out an image of the Earth in the shape of an egg, everyone would say, oh, what the WTF, NASA, you're manipulating the image. I would not be at all surprised if the type of manipulation that is done to an image like this includes rectification to make the thing look round, because somebody decided if you show people the Earth and it looks distorted, they're going to think something weird. I mean, I don't know. I'm just saying there's too much about this evidence that we do not know to be able to come to any conclusion from it. I'm offering explanations to these open-ended hypothetical questions that make sense.
So, Jason, things fall into three baskets. It works on a ball Earth and a flat Earth, or it doesn't matter because it doesn't prove anything. Works only on a ball Earth, works only on a flat Earth. And so what we're looking for today is something that works only on a ball Earth. We can show you things that only work on a flat Earth and work on both, but we have yet to find anything that only works on a ball Earth. So the formula for a ball 24,901 miles around is 8 inches per mile squared. A 6 foot tall man standing at the edge of calm water, not land, because water is going to lay flat. After a mile, it's 8 inches. After 3 miles, it's 6 feet. Okay, that's the formula. 3 times 3 times 8 divided by 12, 6 feet. So, according to mainstream science, a 6 foot tall person could his horizon on calm water would be 3 miles away. He shouldn't be able to see the water surface unless there was a big wave or something that was sticking up above the curvature. We have photos, videos of known positions, wind turbines or oil rigs that we can see. Now, there is compression where we're like, are we seeing the whole oil rig or not? That doesn't matter, because beyond the oil rigs, miles beyond it, we can see the surface of the water. Okay? We shouldn't be able to see the water even in front of I think the camera height, it was like 1.9 miles away, but we could see the oil rigs were 13 miles away, 15 miles away, whatever, and we could see water well beyond them. Now, the only explanation on the ball side is, well, it refracted up and it stopped right at your eye level. It stopped, didn't go higher. It just refracted up and you're seeing something that's behind a physical curve. But we can see these. We can show these. We have many videos that will show you this. And we've done them personally. They're not just like a picture off the internet. What would you say to that?
I mean, again, it's difficult for me to evaluate this without seeing all of the parameters. I know when it comes to developing complex things or doing complex calculations, there are often times that when I'm talking about complex things, when you're building a computer network, or when I designed and built a stereoscopic 3D camera where I know this seems like it has nothing to do with what you're asking, but give me a second.
Hold on, Darren, can you bring up the picture while he's talking, like the Black Swan or what? Do you have one of those?
When you're dealing with complex things, sometimes you're sitting there looking at it saying, like, this makes no sense. There's no way this could be if this, or why is this not happening when it should be? And it sometimes takes a lot of effort to figure out where the disconnect is and what you're not understanding that causes the thing that you think should be one way to be another. And again, without evaluating every aspect of what you're saying, it's impossible for me to answer that, because I'm getting a general sense of what occurred. I mean, doesn't the ocean go up and down quite a bit? I mean, when I'm in it, I know there are waves that go up. My body bounces up and down. How much is that happening? And we're talking about 6 feet. I mean, I just don't know, because I can't really evaluate that. I mean, again, these are, for every question like that, we could say, well, how is it that people who have flown in the Concorde have observed the curvature of the Earth? And why is it if a ship goes sailing directly away from you, eventually you will lose sight of it? Is it not going over the horizon? So what are the answers to that?
All right. The first is the Concorde. They're looking out through a curved window, but we have yet to see a real, well, you look out through a curved window on the ground.
On a regular plane, don't you?
Well, planes. The other thing is, when we look, we can see the same distance in all directions, and that creates a flat circle. And in our mind programming will tell us that there's a curve there. Okay, but we can see too far. This is a long involved video, but basically we should not be able to see the water. Those pilings should be below the curve.
Correct. They should be falling behind the curve. So somebody can say, oh, well, this part here, I think you can see my mouse. This part here is actually distorted, or it's being risen up from behind the curve. All that aside, the fact is that the curvature of the Earth should be here. And as these go further and further off into the distance and get further and further away, they are supposed to fall behind the curvature. They don't. Now, to believe that what the globe is telling us is that all these things, these pictures, these images that we're seeing, all these have somehow magically, due to some sort of super looming, have risen up to place themselves directly at the horizon line. And, we can go on from there, but I mean, this kind of gets into the same problem that we're having with boats. As boats go off into the distance, like you're talking about, they do get smaller. And as they get closer to this kind of line of obscurity here, sometimes they get distorted and you might only see the mast, or you might only see the top flag or whatever. But if you take a camera and zoom further in, you can then see the boat again. The problem is that we've been told over and over again that boats going off in the distance go behind some curve. And it's just not the case, because we're able to take a camera now that our optics are getting to the point where we're able to zoom in. And again, for all I know, back, 700 years ago, whatever it was, when they saw boats leave the shore and they headed off in the distance, I don't dispute that people at that time said, oh, that boat must have gone over the edge because we lost sight of it. Well, they didn't have the optics to zoom in to see what was actually going on. Today we do. Today we have optics to show us that boats never go over the curve. Now, it may be the case that, oh, well, they were lying before to us, that they were just using that as an example of why the Earth's a globe. And now they realize, well, actually, you're seeing too far. But the fact of the matter is, we're seeing, when you take their ball mathematics, that there's a problem, that the boat should be hidden. And we're able to see, for instance, there's a place, Canigou Mountain. I talk about it a lot. It's 175 miles away. And people have gotten images. And it's a really weird phenomenon. You can only see it when the sun sets behind it. When the sun sets behind this mountain, it is, creates a silhouette, and you're able to see the mountain peaks from 175 miles away. That mountain should be miles behind the curve, like, 2 miles behind the curve. You shouldn't be able to see the mountain again at all. Now, again, there's an explanation for that. The explanation is, it's being loomed up. It's refraction. You're seeing around bends. You're seeing around curves. So where I'm talking about excuses is, it's very easy if you just always have an answer, no matter what that answer entails. And for the globe, they get to use some things that they just get to use the word gravity, right? They say, well, gravity holds the waters to the.
I don't think gravity affects light, though.
No, I wouldn't think so either. But that's what they're saying. They're saying that the light bends.
Well, let me ask this, Jaron. So, isn't it true that someone could get in a boat and go from New York through the Panama Canal, around the world, and back to New York? How can they do that if it's not a globe?
Sure.
Awesome question. Question. Hold it. Let's just stay on this topic for a second. We'll get into circumnavigation in a second. Darren, can you pull up the picture? I got the Canigou video up.
Yes.
So, Jason, when the sun isn't lined up with this mountain, you can't see it, because the light, even during the brightest part of the day, the light reflecting off that mountain can't punch through the atmosphere and get to our eyes because it's too far away. It's just washed out and it looks like sky. Hold on. Only when the sun is lined up with it and is going beyond it do we see the outlook, the outline. And Jaren, how low is that supposed to be behind the curve from where that shot was taken?
This picture here, I think it's like 2,000 feet. The peak of it should be 2,000 feet behind the curvature of Earth.
Let me pause you, gentlemen, because I
Sure.
want you to imagine if I was doing, before they had television, this was the first implementation of stereoscopic 3D. They would do shadow puppet shows where something would shine from behind the screen, one color of light and another color of light, and the audience would put on the 3D glasses and they would see 3D projected on a screen. So imagine we had a cutout stencil of a mountain and a projector behind it, and you were sitting somewhere. If I put the projector above the mountain and shined it down, the shadow of it would land in one place on the screen. If I put the projector below the mountain and shined it up, the shadow would project higher up on the screen. There's a hell of a lot of moisture and all kinds of particles in the air in between wherever this camera was and that mountain was. And how do we know what we're seeing is not a shadowed silhouette projected onto air molecules, water vapor molecules, dust?
It's completely, you can see every bit of the mountain. You can see
I'm seeing a two-dimensional representation of a three-dimensional mountain.
What you're saying is,
and it's a shadow That's
Hold on.
me. I'm just saying it's an optical presentation.
So what I'm saying when I say making excuses, I just want to make sure that you understand what your excuse.
I object to the word excuse. I'm offering an explanation, and I'm not going to have everything that I say be dismissed as an excuse. I'm trying to offer a scientific explanation how a phenomenon like this could happen. Because again,
you're able to make explanations like that. I mean, what you're saying is this mountain is actually on the other side. Think of the ball Earth. It's on the other side. And because the sun is behind it, it's projecting a shadow up to where we see it perfectly at the horizon line. That's really your explanation?
My explanation is that this is an inadequate experiment to arrive at proof. When we start talking about proof,
we said we weren't going to go for proof.
We're already losing. So we're talking about evidence. You guys have presented me with a piece of evidence and you're alleging that it represents X. And I'm saying I'm not convinced that it does, because I think there are other explanations that could explain how this is happening. And this is the situation that I run into in every flat earth conversation that I've had. Explanations are offered and often even presented as proof of something, which I do not believe stand up to scrutiny as proof. I think they are evidence, they are possible evidence, but I'm offering alternative explanations, alternative evidence that could also explain it. I might not have the full scientific thing down, but if we went there and we had physicists and optical scientists, and
what you're saying though, it would be impossible for us to ever show you an image.
No,
hold on.
No, you're jumping to conclusions that I will not allow, Jaron. I have not said that it's impossible. I've said that that is inadequate evidence.
Okay, hold on. So let me just explain what I'm saying. It would be impossible for us to ever show you any evidence of seeing something too far at this point, because your answer would be that it's being lifted up and shown to us in some sort of shadow format. So
no, we're going to end the interview soon if you change the things that I say. What I'm saying is what you're showing me is the sun behind something and a two-dimensional representation of it that somehow that's landed on an image sensor and created an image that I'm now looking at. And there are a lot of things in between that mountain and my eyeballs that are introducing artifacts, lenses,
of course,
image sensors, air particles, water molecules. There's a lot of stuff going on there. And to just look at an image and jump to a conclusion and say, this is the only conclusion and it's impossible for me to be convinced because you've shown me 2 or 3 examples, that's an unacceptable debate.
What I'm saying, we could show you an unlimited amount of examples, meaning we could show you the Eiffel Tower and say, we're seeing this from too far. And your answer would be, well, there's a lot of things in between us and the Eiffel Tower that are causing the light of the Eiffel Tower to be shined.
Is that your answer?
That is not my answer. That is something that Jaron just said, a hypothetical scenario that I haven't seen. You know, why is it when I look at an image of the Eiffel Tower on Google Earth, it looks like it's planted on the floor? Is the Eiffel Tower flat? No, it's because the satellite is so far away that lots of optical distortions get introduced. And so the thing looks totally flat. And I mean, again, what you're demonstrating right here, Jaron, is your propensity to draw conclusions about what I will do based on one thing that I've said. And frankly, it doesn't give me a lot of confidence in your conclusion drawing ability. It makes me think that you jump to conclusions because I did not say that.
It maybe does. And what I'm actually jumping to the conclusion of is, well, we shouldn't be showing any more evidence of seeing things too far, because at this point, I understand that.
Yeah, you're not getting what I'm saying.
Yeah, I guess I don't get it, because I feel like you would never say, oh, that's interesting, we are seeing too far. You would say, oh, there's an explanation for that. The explanation is that the atmosphere is in between us and that the items are lifted up.
The explanation is exact. I didn't say the items were lifted up. You can imagine if I had a flashlight.
Items are lifting up.
I was standing behind a screen. You're looking at a silhouette. A silhouette is a shadow. It's not the mountain. You're not touching the silhouette. It's a very distant shadow image of something. So how are we seeing that? Well, light is hitting the retina of your eye if you're standing right there looking at it. How is that light reaching you? Light bends when it hits water. Water vapor is in the air over the ocean. So there is more to this phenomenon than just an image on the screen and we draw a conclusion. I'm sorry if what I'm saying is upsetting you or disagreeing with your conclusions.
It shouldn't upset anybody.
Yeah.
And I think that it would be ludicrous to think that after only 50 minutes of discussing the topic that you would be changing your complete worldview when we've only shown you a limited amount of evidence. And there's so much to discuss on this topic that it would be a good idea to move on from the seeing too far, even though that's my favorite.
Because I've only got another 10 minutes. So let's go to the next thing.
As I really do appreciate your knowledge of cameras and optics optics and stuff. And so I would love to go back to the whole solar eclipse idea and just get your take, because I certainly can't explain it. Now, if the moon is in front of the sun, and obviously this doesn't prove the earth is flat, this is just more along the lines of we were lied to by NASA and the heliocentric model. And, in a court of law, a lot of times we like to look at the credibility of a witness. And so I'm questioning the credibility of NASA. I like, if someone is proven to lie to me, then I take that into my consideration. Mm-hmm. So if we are looking at a solar eclipse and multiple astronomers in different areas during an eclipse, they don't detect the moon coming in and they just see that bite coming out of the sun. How would you explain that? And then also, if the sun is an infinite light source, then the shadow of the moon should be the exact size of the moon itself. And what we see is that the shadow on the earth does not reflect what they say the size of the moon is. So I'm just curious to know what your immediate response is to that. And of course, it would require a lot more contemplation and looking into it on your end after this.
Yeah, and again, I mean, it goes into just a litany of areas that I have no expertise in. But I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is that, I'm crushing your head thing. I mean, my thumb is definitely smaller even than the area on screen that Dave's face is taking up. But when I do this, he's completely covered. So what's the distance of the moon to the observer? The distance of the moon to the sun? I mean, I don't know. There's too many factors there that I can't comment on. I don't have an explanation for how that works.
Okay. Well, what about the solar eclipse and not seeing the moon? What about, how would you respond to the moon not approaching the sun and we only see it like cutting out of it? I mean, that just blows my mind, because I certainly don't know how to explain it.
If it's so big and so close to you that when it's here, you don't see it. And when it's here, it appears to be immediately there. That could, I mean, I don't know. Again, I haven't studied eclipses. I'm not an astronomer. This is way outside my area of expertise.
Let's talk about circumnavigation, because you asked, how can you go to California, travel dead reckon west 270 degrees and hit Japan and China and end up back in New York? Okay. Jaron, I'm going to share my app, if that's all right.
Sure.
So circumnavigation, on the flat Earth, I'm going to turn on the compass here. The North Pole is the magnetic north, and south is every direction away from north. Okay, so that is south, that is south, that is south, and that is south. If I leave from California and I go west, let's say I leave from Mexico, I follow this yellow line, and I am heading 270 degrees because my compass north needle is pointing towards the north. I'm still going 270 degrees, and look, I'm back to where I started from. I can do the same thing east. But if I want to go...
Wait. What if you make a left? Where do you hit the edge? And how come you don't fall off? And how come no one's done that in thousands of years of driving around in boats?
So because there is no edge to the earth that we know of, but hold tight. Let me just finish what... So east and west are circles on a flat earth and on a globe earth. There's no difference what I'm telling you on a globe earth. People circumnavigate all the time. You can also go from Mexico, head north over Alaska, keep going straight. You're heading south, and now you're in the Far East, and you went in a straight line. You went north and south. Or you can go west. What nobody has ever done is gone south and then shown up over here, or gone south over here and shown up in Australia. Nobody's ever done it. If you look up the world record for south-north circumnavigation, they literally went down here to Antarctica. They turned around, went like over here, then they went to the north and they came back, and they called that circumnavigation. Okay, that's got to make you scratch your head.
I just don't understand why somebody who wanted to test this couldn't get in a boat and keep going until they hit the edge.
Because the edge, so you understand, is the shoreline of the world ocean, and that shoreline is the shore of Antarctica. Okay, and then no one's allowed. In 1957 they made the Antarctic Treaty. All the countries that were at war and everything, they all signed on, protect the penguins. Nobody, no corporation, nobody can independently explore Antarctica. And even if they let you, where are you going to go? Where are you going to get food and fuel? Where are you going to navigate? GPS doesn't work down there. Compasses don't work.
Why does GPS not work there?
Because there's no GPS down there. GPS is a land-based thing. It's not from satellites. There's no GPS between California and Hawaii. There's no GPS over the center of the Amazon jungle.
What?
There's no GPS in the southern oceans. Okay.
Have you tested that? Who's come to that determination? I've used GPS in some pretty remote places.
Yeah, there is some GPS in some places wherever they can have a landmass. There's also NASA has thousands of balloons in the air at all times carrying satellites. They don't advertise that. There's
Have you seen those?
yes, tons.
They fall down sometimes.
Yeah, they've had disasters. The one just crashed a couple weeks ago in the Congo, and there's
NASA balloon,
South America,
a Satelloon. So Jaron, can you pull up a picture?
Well, supposedly there's over 50,000 balloons above our head at any time, according to NASA officials. Now,
why wouldn't NASA publicize that? Why wouldn't they be talking about that huge program? That's just speculation. Maybe it's top secret.
I've just never heard of it before. Right now, I've never seen it.
Yeah. So, Jaron, can you pull up a picture? You have one?
Yeah. We also had the guest on Crow 777 Radio who explained that the Sirius radio, they always say, oh, satellite this, satellite that. And they're injecting this word into the public mind. But that's all ground-based, admittedly ground-based technology as well. So that's just an example of them using one word to help people continuously believe in this certain idea when really it's not as described.
Right. And I don't really know I just searched NASA balloons. I mean, it's a very easy search. They've got a whole entire balloon program.
Well, but aren't these weather balloons? I mean, yeah, they use balloons, but
satellites up to 8,000
they're connected to what we see as satellites. And we don't even see any satellites from space. All we get is CGI. And I would love to see a picture of a real satellite, this amazing technology that's doing all these great things. Why can't we see a picture of it, like a real picture? I'm pretty
sure you can see the International Space Station in the sky. It looks like a dot.
Yes. You can see what they call the International Space Station. And even though it does look very similar to what they say it looks like, I maintain that there are no humans on it, and it's not like the massive space station that they say it is. But it does look like that. A lot of people think that we're not aware of that, but where there's so many amateur astronomers that do detect the ISS, but all we know is that it's a light in the sky. We can't. I mean, I don't know. We could get into the ISS. I know we're running out of time. Also, David, I was curious if you wanted to show the sun fade out that you did with your personal. I think it's good to show our personal observations, and the sun fade out that you did with your drone was absolutely incredible. I would love Jason to see that.
I can pull it up in a second for sure.
Okay.
I had a good point, but it's gone.
I'm sorry, David.
Well, the other thing about circumnavigation, because I would agree with you that it should be quite easy for someone just to go down south and sail around and prove this one way or the other. The problem is that part of the Antarctic Treaty is that nobody who goes below 60 degrees south is allowed to carry any fuel on board. So I could show you the exact place where it says it. It's an absolute law. Yeah, it's very weird. And it should call into question, why would that be? Because all it allows you to do is, if you are a boat, you can pretty much go from any of the land. Dave, if you bring up your app again, just one more time, just to show that you can basically leave South America, you can leave South Africa, you can leave Australia, and you basically have enough fuel to go to the edge of Antarctica and come right back. That's essentially what the most you can do. So if somebody said, Jaron, why don't you go down and explore Antarctica? If I got a boat, a big yacht, whatever kind of icebreaker yacht.
Life-threatening, of course.
Yeah, that too, right? I mean, so this is a problem, is that there's a lot of issues. It's not as easy as people think. Also, people say, well, why don't you go down there and explore Antarctica? Well, you can't go. You have to have permission. You have to get EPA permits and everything, and they turn down a lot of people who try and go, unless you're part of the big show. I mean, my biggest thing is when I first heard from my wife that she thought, is there a possibility that the earth could be flat? And I yelled at her and I said, no, you're absolutely crazy. I did. And I said, how do planes go around it? I mean, come on. I mean, she's flown to the east and gone to Germany. I've flown to the west and gone to the Philippines. I said, there's no possible way. And it wasn't until weeks later when I saw that map, when I was actually doing what everybody tries to do, right, which is disprove the flat earth. And I saw this map and I started realizing, oh, shit, people could just fly around one direction or the other. So then I said, wait a second, there's an inherent flaw in this map we're looking at right now. And that is that this map does not allow anybody to circumnavigate north-south. It only allows east-west. So I said, okay, all I need to do is go look up all the times, which if you think about it, billions of people, probably, maybe hundreds of millions, have circumnavigated east-west, correct? I mean, as far as, well,
I've done it.
Yeah, you've flown around the world, right? Jason,
yes. I don't know what direction the plane is going.
Right. Okay. So what I'm saying is we've all gone east-west, but none of us have gone north-south. So then I looked up thinking, well, there must be tons of people who have done it. and you find only 2 or 3 instances in history where supposed people have crossed Antarctica. It took them 4 years. It's this big production. And then one of the guys is, and I've talked about this many times on my channel, Sir Ranulph Fiennes, but he's basically an actor. He's involved with the Queen. He's the third Baron of something or other. He's the Queen's cousin, and he's like considered the greatest explorer of all time. Well, he's been found in court to be faking incidents on these trips. So actual court cases where he basically told some lady, hey, we're going to be going through Antarctica. We need to pretend like we fell down this crevice. She ended up getting hurt and sued him because she says he's out there faking. Most of what they did was faked for TV. So it's just one of those stories. He's supposedly the guy that did it. If you look it up, there's just nobody else that's done it. And then, like I said, or like Dave brought up, in 2016, I think, or late 2015, I saw some report that there was going to be some plane that was going to be trying to make the record for the quickest north-south circumnavigation by a single pilot. And they said, oh, it's strapped with this GPS tracker called Spider Links or something. I said, okay, great. I'll track this guy. I want to watch what he does. And it was going to be a multiple-day event, right? Mm-hmm. But he left North Carolina, went down to, Dave, if you can kind of draw it on the map there a little bit with your mouth, that might help. So he left North Carolina, went down to Brazil, and then from Brazil was supposed to fly across Antarctica and come out over at Australia or New Zealand. But he went to 90 degree, turned around and went back to Brazil, and then went over to New Zealand across the water, then went up to the North Pole, came back to North Carolina, and they gave him the record for circumnavigation. He has the fastest record for north-south circumnavigation. To me, right there, that was the biggest thing I'd ever seen, because I said, hold on a second, the guy didn't cross Antarctica. And when you ask them, because people asked him, hey, what happened? Why didn't you cross Antarctica? He said he got too close to where he thought 90 degrees was, and the weather was horrendous, and his dial stopped working, his compass and things like that. So he had to turn around and go back. So then he went in a completely way that it wouldn't be circumnavigation. And that's where I said, okay, there's a problem here. Why would we ever call that circumnavigation? Not to mention there's a lot of other problems with the fact that there's no cruises in the Southern Hemisphere that go from, you would think there'd be cruises that would go from like Australia to South America, correct? Now people say, but people say, oh, well, it's too much water and it's too dangerous because there's no places for them to go if there's an emergency. But there's a lot of problems with the globe model being, that should be on the bottom of the ball Earth. It should be closer distances than it really is if you look at that.
Well, let me interrupt you because I have to go, but I want to ask this one final question. What would be the purpose? Why would they care if we think the Earth is a globe or flat? What's the difference?
Who wants to take it? Want me to do it?
Take it away, Dave. Tell me.
Good, Dave.
Because, Jason, if they can convince you that nothing exploded and then it became everything, and then lightning struck and created an amoeba that turned into a mutant fish, that turned into a monkey, that turned into a human, and you live on a spinning ball flying through infinite space where there's other trillions of other ones, and you're a random speck, rather than you are the center of creation, that we are special, that we are created. This place was created for us. Mutations created our eyes that communicate with our brains to let us, do all the stuff that we do. That's insanity. Okay. So if they can convince you of that, they can convince you that a scary little bug will kill you if you get within 6 feet of somebody. Okay. They can convince you of all of this other stuff. If they keep you in fear, feeling insignificant, then they can control you. And this is all about control. We could agree on that. They want to control us. Jason, if you knew that there was more land out there, that there was other continents out there, that there was no shortage of supplies, if you knew that there's no such thing as an asteroid coming in and destroying us, if you knew that nuclear bombs didn't exist, if you knew all of these things, you wouldn't be in fear and you wouldn't give up your rights. You wouldn't give up your God-given, senses and trade them in for nonsense. I mean, the stuff they feed us is nonsense. Believing in NASA, the only way someone can believe in NASA is because they refuse to look. I'm not saying you refuse to look. You just haven't looked deep enough yet. If you look on the space station and catch them hanging by wires, without a doubt, that tells you they're faking the space station. Then you can unwind it all from there. Okay. So I became a flat earther or a true earther or a globe denier before I knew that NASA was fake. Okay. 100% fake. The purpose of NASA is to make us think we could live on another ball. They put a fence over us, the Van Allen radiation belts, and they put a fence around us, the Antarctic Treaty, and they told us there's nothing else out there. It's like the Truman Show. That's it. Everything's been discovered. There's no need to go looking any further.
Yeah. And you put people into a box and you limit their ability to understand the nature of reality. It is so much easier to control them and fool them of anything. And also, before you go, I just would love it if you looked into emergency landings. They don't make any sense in the globe model, but if you look, it's just perfect.
Emergency
on the
landings
model.
of what? Of
Commercial airlines, and then also the jet stream. I always thought it was really weird that the jet stream goes like that on the heliocentric model, but if you put it on this flat Earth model, it's just a perfect circle around. And also, I would look into the seasons and why. And how those work and how it's explained by now. I mean, I wish I could have gotten you alone, Jason. Would be so much fun. But you know what?
Whoa, this show just great. Totally changed direction.
No, you know what I mean. You know what I mean. But this has been so great. I just want to thank you for all of this because there's so much to go into, and I just love this conversation, and I love your open mind and your willingness to talk about this.
Thank you, Rose. Thank you. I appreciate it.
This is the flight route from Australia to Santiago, Chile. This is the way they go, and this is what that same flight route looks on a flat Earth, pretty much a straight line.
Yeah, like women going into labor and they need to land immediately, and why would they go out of the way? And then
there's so many emergency landings where they landed in places that were nowhere in line with the globe. But if you look at the flight on a flat Earth, that they landed in Alaska because Alaska was the closest piece of land in line with them, and the globe has them out here somewhere.
Yeah, if you look at Japan on that map right there and say that person's flying to California, then Alaska makes sense as an emergency landing. If you look at the globe, it really doesn't. Somewhere in Hawaii might be better, or there's a lot of examples of these emergency flights or emergency landings. Yeah, that's important. But I think, like you said, the way that the sun and moon work on a flat Earth makes a lot more sense. I mean, I don't know if you know the globe model that they give us, but they tell us that the sun is further away during our winter. Further away during our summer. There's all these little things that just make zero sense when you start thinking about it. Now, again, do they have answers? Yes, they're able to. Well, it's actually the reason that it's summer is not because the sun is closer, but because it's angled. I mean, they've got an answer for everything, but a lot of it just doesn't make sense. That's what got a lot of us here. And I agree with what you said at the beginning, that sometimes when things start not making sense and somebody provides a better answer for you, that's why I start to lean in that direction. Again, I just don't trust anything NASA puts out. Again, a big step for me was realizing that we didn't go to the moon. That's huge, because from there you can really start to ask a lot of questions as to why they perpetrated that for so long. What was so important about going to the moon? Well, one of the things was the blue marble image that came in 1972 that was used all the way up until 2015. You can find Obama admitted that was the second picture ever of the Earth was taken in 2015. The first was taken in 1972. So, I mean, from that time to that time, there's nobody else who ever took a photo of the Earth. So,
well, I mean, it's an intriguing topic for sure. I think we're going to have to continue to discuss it in the future. But I want to thank you guys for inviting me on the show. I have to say, Jaron, you're doing a great job with StreamYard here. This is the best produced StreamYard show that I've ever seen.
It's working. It's working.
We were going to take some calls, but if you have to go.
Yeah, I really got to run, guys. I'm sorry. I only had an hour, and we're about an hour and 10. But let's do it again sometime, and maybe take the calls, continue the show, store up the questions, and then we can revisit in the future.
Before you go, last question.
Yeah.
Now, the photos, we can make we can make excuses and not pointing my finger at you. We can make alternative explanations. So that falls into the works on both, doesn't work on either, whatever. It's not proof. What's your number one proof that we live on a globe? What's the number one thing that tells you we live on a globe?
I don't know that I necessarily have something that I consider proof or evidence. It's this is
what's the number one thing that makes you think we believe on a globe?
Always been taught that, and haven't heard a compelling enough counter explanation to cause me to disbelieve it.
Okay, so you were told, and you haven't heard a better explanation yet.
Yes, and there are things that I observe elsewhere, centrifugal force. A lot of people who I've spoken about this topic with say, how could we be hurtling through space and yet you don't feel like you're moving? Well, when I'm in an airplane, I don't feel like I'm moving. I'm standing still on something
Take
that's
the outside of the airplane off and double the speed, and then tell me if you feel like you're moving.
right, but we've got an atmosphere that's covering us and all
That's
that kind of stuff.
turning with the Earth, right? Did you know at 40,000 feet, our atmosphere is outrunning the spin of the Earth? The Earth is spinning this way, and at 40,000 feet, the atmosphere is outrunning it. You'd think it would lag behind or maybe spin with it. It's outrunning it.
Let's not make Jason feel like he's being held hostage.
Yeah.
No, it's
Open
just
to
hard for
coming
me to
back.
answer these questions. I don't have a good explanation for that. The photographic stuff I can answer with personal knowledge. The rest of this stuff, I'm just guessing. So I really am not the best person to ask. But
We're just trying to figure it out also.
yeah. Get someone from NASA. Get a scientist. Are there any high-level scientists who say, hey, you're right?
We've approached
They
them
won't
all,
come and talk
and they
to us.
say they will never talk to a flat earther because they can't.
I wish they would just end it. Come and
No.
talk to us.
Yeah.
We've been wanting for a lot of years. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, listen, I appreciate the time, you guys, and thanks for having me on, and we'll speak again soon.
Thanks,
All right.
Jason. See ya.
Thank you so
Take
much.
care.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.
So just one thing I want to say, people in the chat, I don't think Jason is a shill.